In this video, we're going over steps to take to get cleaner and clearer and better sounding results when mixing and editing your audio. So stick around. Hey everyone, Eric here. Welcome to my channel where I make gear demos and instructional videos like this one aimed to help musicians and creatives like you. Now recently I filmed and edited a video that's living over on the Fuzzlord channel. It's a video where myself, Jason, and our buddy Troy went to Sprout City Music Studio here in Eugene, set up all of our amps. I played drums, Jason was on the guitar and vocals, and Troy played bass, and we all recorded at the same time. In that session, our audio engineer, Christian, recorded each individual instrument separately and gave me each track. In this video, I wanted to share the steps that I took to mix and edit the audio tracks together to get the final version that you see over on the Fuzzlord channel. Before we jump into the computer, I do want to say that there's no one right or wrong way to do all of this mixing stuff, and I just wanted to share my method with you. So hopefully you find some takeaways from it, hopefully you learn something, or you just see a different way of doing the same thing that you may do. So let's jump over into the computer and see how I went about mixing these tracks. Okay everyone, we're inside the computer now. We're inside Premiere Pro, which I use as both my video editing and my audio editing. So I'm sort of using Premiere Pro as a DAW as well as a video editor. And what I've done is I've organized my project, this project right here, into video and audio. I have all the stems that I got from Christian from Sprout City. I've drugged them onto their own channel in the audio section right here, and these top two tracks in the audio section are attached to the video files. So they're just scratch audio I use to sync the video with the audio. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go through and treat each track separately. We can hear a rough mix here. See, it already sounds pretty cool, but we need to balance some levels, of course, and then I want to do some further EQing. So I'm going to flip over to the audio workspace, and here we have all of our sliders for the track. I like to stay in the track mixer mostly. You can do clip mixer, but this applies it to a clip level, whereas track mixer applies it to the whole track. And this is where I can insert my effects. This is where I can route some submixes if I want to. I've also named each track right here. You can see kick, snare, tom, floor, overhead. I've named each track to indicate to me easily what it is. Okay, so one thing I want to do first of all is I want to go into the overheads right here. So this overhead mic is picking up the drums, of course, from the overhead, and I don't want it to capture any of the kick drum. I don't really want it to be capturing any of the lower frequencies, you know. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go back into the editing workspace, go to effects, and I'm going to type in EQ. I'm going to drag the parametric equalizer over here. What I want to do is to carve out frequencies that shouldn't be there in that particular track. So if I go into here, it's going to bring up the EQ right here. And if I play the track, it's going to show me an analyzation of the frequencies that are there. You can see that there's quite a few, there's quite a bit of bass content in here. And as I said before, I don't want any of that bass content in this track specifically. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the high pass right here. I'm going to go all the way to super severe cut. I'm going to cut, keep going. I'm going to go until the cymbals sound too affected, and then I'm going to back it down. So right here, they're too affected. So I'd say right about there. Again, that's a pretty severe cut. You can hear off, on, And this is my way of doing it. This isn't the right way or the wrong way. Some people might think it's the wrong way, but there's no right or wrong. This is just the way that I'm doing it. I'm carving out a ton of frequencies in this specific track so it sits better in the mix and there's not as much mud. We've applied that to a clip level. So this effect lives on this clip. I've done that specifically so I can go back here and still further shape it. What I want to do is some fundamental adjustments on each clip before I start to do global adjustments. Now that we have the overhead low frequencies out of the mix, we're gonna move on to, let's try the bass here. So Troy likes his bass tones really dark and really full, not a whole bunch of high-end frequencies. So I'm gonna pull the parametric EQ onto the track. We're gonna click on edit. We're gonna see the frequencies that are in this track. So you can see big low end bump right here, and it trails off as you get higher. So what I'm gonna do is I'm actually just gonna boost this. This is just so I can hear what it's doing. There aren't many frequencies that he needs above maybe like 2,000 or 3,000 hertz right there. I'm gonna turn that off. You can turn it off just by clicking the number. I'm gonna do a gentler low pass this time. I'm gonna roll off the high frequencies, and I'm just gonna sort of mimic this curve right here. I'm not gonna do any severe cuts on his bass because it's sitting pretty much in the frequencies that we want right now. Move over to the guitar now. We'll just analyze the track. So with guitar, one thing that you want to understand is that you don't need all of this low end content right here. That's again gonna muddy up your mix. If you think about the mix, the frequencies, you want the guitar to be more in the mid range here, and you want the bass to take over the low end as well as the kick drum. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna high pass again. Pretty severe roll off here. Start at the bottom, down at 20, then I'm gonna roll it up and see how it sounds. When it starts to affect the overall sound, making it weak, I'm gonna back it down and then go from there. I think 77 is pretty good, somewhere around there. And it's not really taking away from the guitar track, it's just eliminating those sub-frequencies that don't really contribute to this specific track. It's really eliminating the bleed from the bass and maybe the kick drum. Let's go to the snare now. The snare is pretty important on this one too. This is the frequency spectrum of the snare. And you can see, I'm sure you know what I'm gonna do. This low end right here does not need to be in a snare track. So I'm gonna severe cut, listen to it, and roll it up. 173, around there is gonna be the low end of the snare. So I'm gonna roll it back down to 100-ish, somewhere right around there. Okay, and then of course, same thing up at the low pass, rolling off the high end. We still want the stick on the snare, that high end clack, but we don't want all those cymbals to come through. And I think that's a pretty happy medium. So this is the whole vocal track. We're gonna do the same exact thing. You'll notice that the level gets quieter. When we recorded, Christian, the audio engineer, put a gate on the vocal mic so it wouldn't bleed as much in the mix.
Black in the heart a little longer. Colors they...
So you can see right around here is where his voice peaks. His lowest resonant peak of his voice is right around 176. So I'm gonna go down to 120 maybe. Make sure that's not taking away from the vocals. Yeah, so it's taking away the low end, just like in all the other ones. We want to restrict the frequencies that each track makes so they're not muddying up the final mix. One thing for this specific track to keep in mind is that we're not going to have the vocals super forward in the mix. It's not going to be a vocal-centric mix. With this style of music, it's pretty routine to put the vocals a little bit back in the mix, and that just means for them to be a little bit quieter compared to all the other instruments. With all these reductions in EQ, what we're doing is we're trying to control the muddiness of the mix, make it a little bit cleaner, a little bit clearer, and in doing so, we're trying to control some of the bleed. And bleed is when one mic picks up a different instrument. So right now, here we'll solo the tom mic, and you can hear, I'm not playing the tom right now, but you can hear all of the signal coming through from the microphone. So you can hear the guitar a little bit, you can hear some of the sub frequencies on the bass, you can hear the snare pretty clearly. Now, I don't want to cut any of the frequencies because when I do play this tom, it's actually a pretty low tom. You can hear that one hit, or the couple hits right there. What I'm going to do is actually cut out all the parts where I'm not playing that tom from this track. And this is a little intensive and it's a little time consuming in particular, but I like to do that in my tracks, especially since this is a live recording. I don't want to make it not sound like a live recording, but I do want to clean it up as much as I can. So I'm actually going to go through, this is the hit right here. And so after this hit, so I've singled out this one tom hit, and this is actually the only hit on that specific tom in the whole track. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to disable the clips on either side. And what that does is just mutes them. So this is what we have now. And so I'm only going to let through the signals when I'm playing that tom. This corresponds to, this corresponds to this tom right here. So you can see when that sample hits, it's actually that tom right there. I'm going to do the same exact thing, but with the floor tom. So what I've done is I've manually muted, which is pretty much manually gating out what is not being played. So I'm going to reduce the bleed by only letting through the instrument that's meant to be on each of these tracks. So that is the floor tom on this one, and then the high tom, the rack tom on that one. I like to pull down all the faders for the stuff that I'm not going to use right now. Actually, let's just pull them all down. I'm going to start the song. So the song is started. Here's the kick. We're going to bring up the overheads. I think that sounded pretty good. So now we're going to start to introduce the guitar. Actually, both guitar and bass. I'm going to pull the bass up. Now what we're going to do is we're going to carve out some frequency space in a couple different instruments to make some room in the mix for each one. And what I'm talking about specifically is the bass guitar and the kick drum. I'm going to solo both the kick and the bass. Now, I say these specific instruments because they operate in the same low-end frequency. What we'll do is we'll apply a global parametric EQ to each track here. We're going to double-click on the parametric EQ. This is going to, again, give us the frequency representation of the kick drum. Right here is the resonance of the kick drum. And one way I like to tell which frequency it is to make the little point touch that and then bump it back down, because we're not going to cut or boost yet. So that's 83 hertz is where the low-end resonance of the kick drum lies. What we'll do is we'll go over to the bass. We'll analyze this a little bit. You can see the bass is taking up a lot of the same frequencies. We will carve out just a little bit of 80 hertz right here. So I'm going to let's just start with -2. I'm going to take -2 out of the bass and then boost 2 in the kick drum's 80 hertz. Now this is the resonant peak of the kick drum. I'm actually going to roll off the low end a little bit here. Not a super severe one, but there we go. So what we've done is boosted the subs on the bass and cut out that 80 hertz to make room for the kick drum where we boosted that 80 hertz. So I have a decent mix here, a good starting point, and it sounds something like this. Again, we don't want the vocals to be the super focal point of the song in relation to all the other instruments, so they sit a little bit farther back in the mix, but they still add texture to the song. I'm going to add another track, and we're going to make it a submix track. And if you've ever heard the term bus, a bus mix, or busing out to another channel, that's exactly the same thing as a submix track. I can now route the output of selected instruments into this submix track and control the overall volume of the set of instruments instead of having to slide up and down each one. I'm going to put all of the drums into the drum submix track. We can now take the drums out of the mix or make them louder. And we can change the mix and balance of each drum within the drum track instead of having to readjust each slider if we want to make a global change to the drums. I'm going to put on a little bit of compression here. What I'm trying to do with the drums is really just like tighten them up just a tiny bit. There's a light mastering setting that I like to start from. You can see the little red here. What I like to do is I like to get it like sort of working, but not quite. From here, it sounds like we've got a pretty good balance. I will walk away for maybe like 20 minutes, 30 minutes or so, come back, listen again, and then I will make a V1 of this track and send it out to Jason and Troy, see what they think about it. And if they want anything changed, we'll go from there. That is how I treated and edited all these tracks in this video. I hope you've taken away something. I hope you've learned something with this video, and I hope you found it entertaining. Okay, I hope all that info was really helpful to you, and let me know in the comments below if there are some tips or tricks that you use on the regular that you find really valuable that we didn't go over in this video, because I would love for everyone to share their most valuable tricks and editing tips down below. If you want to check out any of the gear I used to make this video, be sure to check the description below for links. And if you like this video, please subscribe to the channel, check out all the other videos. Thank you for watching. Have a good one.